Welcome to episode 53 of Uncovering the Corners of the World podcast. I'm your host, Karina Kasmala. Using research and my personal experiences where I actually set foot in some of these places, I'll be describing some of the unknown attractions in both the US and around the world. Last week, we explored the island off of Florida, the Gypsy Gold Horse Farm, the Warm Mineral Springs, and the Pirate and Treasure Museum. We are leaving Florida and traveling to a neighboring state this week, Georgia. Georgia is in the southeastern part of the United States and the largest state east of the Mississippi River. Besides bordering Florida, Georgia borders Tennessee, South Carolina, the Atlantic Ocean, and Alabama. Our first attraction for this week takes us to a museum where lunch is the most important meal of the day. At some point, you might have carried a lunchbox filled with treats, whether it was to work or to school. Lunchboxes come in all shapes and colors. There are some that are made from fabric, to ones that are made from stainless steel. Some include colorful characters from cartoons, such as Looney Tunes, Disney princesses, and Transformers. Whereas other lunchboxes have multiple pockets throughout. At International Marketplace 318, 10th Avenue in Columbus, Georgia, you can find every design of the metallic square lunchbox at the Lunchbox Museum. The Lunchbox Museum is the largest lunchbox museum in the world. The owner of the museum, Alan Woodall, who used to work as a radio broadcasting company executive, started collecting lunchboxes back in 1989. Today, there are over 3,500 lunchboxes, as well as thermoses, coolers, and tobacco tins. For instance, there is the Thermet Hot lunchbox, built between 1912 and 1920, where you could heat up your food by plugging in the detachable electric cord. The lunchboxes feature pop culture icons such as Bobby Sherman, characters from TV shows like Charlie's Angels, and different takes on the traditional black and red plaid design. Historically, industry stopped producing the metal square lunchboxes in 1986 and started manufacturing plastic lunchboxes. This was after the government claimed that children used the metal square lunchboxes as weapons. According to Woodall, the last lunchbox that was made had an image of Rambo on the front. Today, visitors who experience pure nostalgia from seeing the Superman or Scooby-Doo on the front of the lunchboxes might even have a chance to purchase one, but only if the owner claims that there is a duplicate of that particular lunchbox. Our next attraction takes us to Cumberland Island in Georgia, an island that is measured out to be larger than Manhattan in New York. Cumberland Island National Seashore rests on the edge of Georgia on the Atlantic Ocean. While walking on this 16-mile-long and 3-mile-wide island, you'll likely come across the most picturesque place on the island, Dungeness Ruins. The Dungeness Ruins was originally called the Dungeness Mansion, and it was built in 1884. It was meant to be a summer home for Thomas Carnegie and his wife, Lucy. However, they never had a chance to live in the home together. The mansion expanded to 35,000 square feet, but in 1959, a fire burned down most of the mansion, leaving only some stone and brick wall ruins. Today, the Dungeness Ruins is one of the most photographic attractions on the island. There are tours and self-guided tours offered that allow visitors to walk through the 22,000 square foot mansion ruins. While on Cumberland Island, you might come across another mansion, except this one isn't in ruins. Measuring 22,000 square feet, the Plum Orchard Mansion began its construction in 1898. The mansion was built for George Lauder Carnegie and Margaret Thaw. Today, visitors can step inside the mansion and see furniture, architecture, and machinery that is characterized as being part of the Edwardian High Society. Some of the animals that you'll likely find on the island include the loggerhead turtles, pelicans, herons, alligators, armadillos, and feral horses. The horses didn't originate from there. They were believed to be brought to the island by the Spanish in the 1500s. It's believed that there were about 200 horses on the island in the 1700s. To see the Dungeness ruins and the Plum Orchard Mansion, you'll need to take a boat or a ferry to Cumberland Island. Our last attraction takes us to a different version of the popular National Park landmark. At 8930 Canyon Road in Lumpkin, Georgia is the Providence Canyon State Park. As you enter the park, you will find colorful rock layers with deep valleys that make up Georgia's Little Grand Canyon. In the 1800s, farmers planted cotton on this land, specifically on the sides of the hills. Their farming techniques would break away the top layer of soil and reveal the sandy layer beneath it. After time, the rain would push down on the soil and cause the land to erode and create ditches. These ditches would measure to be 150 feet and 300 feet wide, and they would eventually be turned into canyons. The Little Grand Canyon is roughly 1/30th the depth of the Grand Canyon in Arizona. The Grand Canyon in Arizona measures 5,000 feet in depth. The soil in the Little Grand Canyon is red, pink, orange, and purple colors surrounded by large green trees. There is a total of 43 different colored sands. There is a rare plant that only grows in the area called the plum leaf azalea, a flowering shrub that blooms pink and reddish flowers, and it only blooms in July and August. Besides the plum leaf azalea, visitors can see the magnolia trees with its wide leaves that form a flower. The canyons today are about 200 years old, and they continue to change their form because of the rain. The canyon contains the mineral kaolinite, a type of clay material that can be found in paint, cat litter, and other products. The red-colored part of the canyon is Georgia's red clay that contains iron. There are a total of 9 canyons that you can see walking along the 10 miles of trails. Thank you for listening to episode 53 of Uncovering the Corners of the World podcast. If you are interested in learning more about the Lunchbox Museum, visit the website lunchboxmuseum.com. If you want to learn more about the Cumberland Island, visit the National Park Service website on Cumberland Island. Lastly, to learn more about the Little Grand Canyon, visit the website Georgia State Parks on the Providence Canyon State Park. Be sure to check out Uncovering the Corners of the World podcast, episode 51, On the Road to the Florida Keys on YouTube to see images accompanying the podcast episode. Have a great week.